the Nintendo Switch, formerly the Nintendo NX. After months and months of people speculating, not me, because I didn't care, Nintendo's pretty tight-lipped, and they really seem to have a thing for, if someone finds out Nintendo's secret, they have to add more secrets, so then they could be like, you thought that was a secret, and yes, that may be true, but that wasn't actually the secret, because this is the secret. Nintendo secrets. So the Nintendo Switch is finally revealed in a 3.5 minute commercial trailer. Now I have to spend a lot of time breaking down all of my feelings about the next Nintendo console. So let's talk about the trailer itself first. One thing a lot of people noticed, I didn't actually notice, because these are the sorts of things I never notice. Everyone in the commercial is like a young adult, and the games they showed off, Skyrim, basketball game, Mario, Zelda, not to mention showing off Splatoon like it's the most incredible esports game ever invented. One thing I did notice in the commercial though is that everyone who has an everyone who has a Nintendo Switch also has a big bag with them that they could carry the Nintendo Switch in. You don't see nobody putting it in their pocket, but that leads me to prediction number 1. I think that after 2 or 3 years of the Nintendo Switch, we're gonna get a DS looking clamshell designed Nintendo Switch, which is built specifically for folks who want a portable system. That's my first prediction. Make a note of it. One thing that was exciting though, but I don't know quite enough about it to be really excited, is the multiplayer options. Now they made it look real easy. The scene where a guy and his chums stop their basketball game to play a game of basketball, you can see that they are both playing the same game on 2 different screens, and it looks like the system's connected as simple or even simpler than a DS or 3DS does, which wonderful if true, but it looks like a bit of commercial magic because I just can't see it being that easy. And speaking of basketball game, this is prediction number 2. I know 2K is signed up to work on the Nintendo Switch, and a port of NBA 2K is the most likely scenario, but I will go out on a limb and say that Nintendo is at work on their own sports game again. Back in the N64 days and early GameCube days, Nintendo released a few baseball games and a few basketball games, which came out to moderate success. But unfortunately, the arena has been left to the folks at 2K Games for just about damn near everything. I won't go as far out on a limb as saying Nintendo will make a basketball game. All these licensing issues these days. Something to think about when you're carrying your Nintendo Switch around everywhere in your backpack, jostling around, bumping and everything, is how durable is that controller screen. If you're on the go and that thing hits the floor and it cracks just as easy as your phone, nah, that's a sad day. And I can't imagine Nintendo would ever let something go into production that is that easily breakable. I've had nieces and nephews drop every single one of my controllers, knocking things over and dropping games, and that Nintendo stuff is still ticking. I still have an original Super Nintendo from the early 90s, still have my Wii, still have my N64 from 96, and they're all humming along, and I don't expect anything less of the Nintendo Switch once it's been sitting around for a couple years in my living room. And this is a minor aside, because I haven't really seen that many people doing this, but there's always a small contingent of people every time a new electronic device is announced who just simply complains about how terrible the name is. Now, there are reasons for a name to be terrible, like consumer confusion, like the Wii and Wii U, but generally most electronic devices have terrible names. The iPod, the PlayStation, the Dreamcast. These are all fairly ridiculous names. The only difference is if something's a success, we're gonna say it in our everyday lives. If it's not even a thing, PlayStation, PlayStation, PlayStation. But if it's a big flop, we snicker at the name and think how ridiculous that they thought this would sell. Like the Newton and the Wii U. And if you didn't like the name Nintendo Switch, what do you want to call it? I mean, you could call it the Nintendo 7 if you want to be like PlayStation. Or you could call it the Nintendo 1, I guess, if you want to be like Xbox. You could call it the Nintendo Wii U Us. The Wii U All. Wii U Them. You could call it the Omega Nintendo Entertainment System. Wait. Oh, I actually like that last one. Moving on, there are twice as many developers working on this Nintendo system at Nintendo. So there aren't folks that only work on handheld games, and there aren't folks that only work on console games. Now everybody works on the same games in Nintendo, and I'm really excited for what that could mean, because the production costs of developing for the Wii U and the Nintendo 3DS has really slowed down Nintendo's ability to release games in a timely manner. That, coupled with the fact that the Wii U has lost basically all of its third-party support aside from indie games, well, that's pretty much the story of the Wii U's failure. Another complaint I saw online was tiny controllers. You can use the control. Basically, you can cut the controllers in half and use them as tiny little sideways controllers. Imagine an even smaller Wiimote with a kind of funky button layout. I'm pretty sure the controllers work on Bluetooth, so I'm pretty sure most, if not all, Wii and Wii U controllers will also work for the NX. And the tiny controllers are only for multiplayer anyway. You'd have to buy a second controller if you wanted to play with your friends anyway, you big baby. So invest in another controller then. But the fact that these controllers are so small made me realize, are the small controllers of the NES Mini, which comes out in time for Christmas, actually a secret ploy to prepare our hands for the small controllers of the Nintendo Switch? Think about it. And what about the 3DS? We know that the Nintendo Switch will be replacing the Wii U as the latest Nintendo console beneath your TV. But what about the 3DS? As my initial claim earlier, I'm expecting a clamshell designed version of the Switch, which will appeal to 3DS owners. Something that hasn't been getting a lot of talk during the initial rounds of Nintendo Switch coverage are the actual cartridges that the game uses. Since the system is portable, it was a great idea to switch off of CDs and back to cartridge media. The cartridges themselves look like two DS cartridges stacked on top of each other, but the fact that cartridges are being used at all raises some questions. First and foremost is the fact that is backwards compatibility completely out the window? I mean, there's no disk drive, so there's nowhere to put your GameCube games or your Wii games or your Wii U games. Will Nintendo allow you to move stuff from your Wii U hard drive to the NX? That remains to be seen, but it seems that physical copies of Nintendo games are definitely out the window. The game case now closes atop the game, rendering it nice and snug within the system itself. Unlike the DS or 3DS, where sometimes that shit just pops out and flies across the room. And then the fact that it's a tablet has all sorts of implications for mobile gaming. So let's get this out of the way first. I do believe that the Nintendo Switch has a touchscreen, and I think it's going to be a touchscreen more in line of the dual touch abilities of standard tablets these days, which is why we did not see a stylus anywhere on the controller. I'm pretty sure they left out the touchscreen controls because they wanted to show that this is a serious, hardcore home console that plays all of the Calls of Duties and all of the Sky's Rims and all of the basketballs. So you don't want people tapping on the screen and playing fucking Angry Birds on it. So the fact that there is a touchscreen implies that you will be able to play Nintendo's mobile games on their specific mobile device. So the fact that it's a tablet with a touchscreen begs the question, will Nintendo release their mobile games on the Nintendo Switch? My prediction number 3, I think we're on, is that this is very, very likely. But the fact that Nintendo will release their mobile games to the Switch begs the question, will the Nintendo Switch have an app store similar to the iTunes Store or Google Play? Of course, Nintendo will still have the eShop, and likely you can buy their mobile games as well as all their other games through the eShop. But does Nintendo have any plans to make the eShop more inclusive? To open it up to more developers like the Google Play Store and the iTunes Store have? So not only would games be on there, but also apps for things like ESPN or streaming services. And even crazier, what if Nintendo decides to port either the Apple iTunes Store or the Google Play Store to the Nintendo Switch? Considering Nintendo has already made a big deal with Apple to release the first Super Mario mobile game on their system first, then there is a very outside chance that the iTunes Store will be available for the Nintendo Switch. Now hear me out. Nintendo is already working with Apple to create games for the latest Apple iPhone. I don't know what number it's on. And we all know Apple loves the fact that they're able to control the hardware and the OS for all of their applications. Now, if Nintendo is the only company, of course, making Nintendo Switch tablets, then Apple knows for sure the architecture of that system and that the architecture in that system is not going to change. Therefore, they can make an iTunes Store which would run just as well on the Nintendo Switch as it would on any Apple developed device. Now, this is not a prediction because this is really dreaming big. Seeing the console and seeing the concept is only 1/3 of the battle now. Yes, I want to play it. Yes, I'm going to buy it because it plays Mario Kart. Will I play anything other than Mario Kart on it? Will I do anything else with the console? And that remains to be seen. If we consider this the first pillar, the actual design of the console, then the second pillar would be the video games. Of course, it's a very strong pillar. You could have the most inexpensive, most powerful console, but without games, you ain't got nothing. And this third pillar that has arisen is the OS on the game console. And this is Nintendo's greatest stumbling block. And for the sake of this discussion, I'll include online play as part of the OS because simple and direct and easy to get into online play is incredibly important in this day and age, especially with those hardcore gamers who are always playing basketball and having rooftop parties, I guess. So without an easy to navigate OS, which lets me play online games easily, which lets me add and talk to my friends easily on the system, which allows me to stream videos like Hulu and Netflix. For some reason, I never do that on my consoles, but apparently people do. And also to make it simple to purchase games online. Nintendo online stores have come a long way since the incredibly crummy DSiWare. Then we moved up to the equally crummy Nintendo eShop, but finally with the 3DS and the Wii U, we get something approximating a quality eShop experience, and hopefully they continue to improve upon that. But until we get a nice good look at the OS, it's hard to say. But then there's also the issue that most consoles end up getting an update to really change the layout of their menus and design. So even when we get the Nintendo Switch in our hands on launch day, it could look completely different by Christmas 2017 after an update or two, because consoles love to update. And with that, we're done talking about the NX, at least until we get some more news, which won't happen until next year. So I think we're good for now.